Hi. Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector from the Broken Meeple, and if this is your first time checking out the channel, then stay tuned because you'll find out about board games and the people who play them. Be sure to check out the rest of the content on this channel at your leisure. And if any of the games in this list take your fancy, then consider visiting zatu.co.uk and use my code TBMeeple5 at the bottom of the screen, where you can get a 5% discount on any limit of games at any time, anywhere. Check out the link in the description to find out more. And we continue with the last of the pre-recorded top part of the top 100. I've lost the plot there. You know what I mean. Basically, I've been doing the pre-recorded videos for the top 100, and this will be the last one I am doing because I've got a lot of content to get through at the moment. You want to look at the board behind the camera there? Whew, I can see a lot on there, and I've been recording everything from... Here, I've got podcasts to do at some point today. I've got reviews for Tekkenu and Too Many Bones, Alma Mater, and what else was there? Mysterium Park, I've got them to do. I've also got to play fair few games. I've done a solo player role player that I need to do. It's like, you name it, I got stuff to do. So the idea is that this will be the last of the pre-recordeds, and then I will do 3 live streams to do the final 30 games. But I will be focusing those live streams on discussing the games. So I will interact with the chat, but only about the games, and probably not until the end of the actual top 100 segment itself. The idea being that these videos have been nicely condensed into between 30 to 40 minutes, and I would like those to also end up around the 45-minute mark to make it easier viewing for others. It will basically be me on my laptop showing you the images on Board Game Geek, telling you more about the game, and sort of giving you a bit of a visual aid. But at least with those, it means I can get you those nice and quick, because I could stream all 3 of them in a week, and then we'll be done with the top 100, and I can get back to doing some of the top 10 lists that I know you really want me to do. So looking at this top list, what do we got here? We've got, well, not to sound like a broken record, 1 new game, but don't worry, once we get into the top 30, you're going to see a few more new titles across the way. But even so, quite a few games here. We're kind of moving away. Well, we're going to start off with some heavy stuff, and then actually, that's pretty heavy as well. I suppose we've got another little mix. The new game on this list, though, I think is going to surprise a lot of people that it's up this high. But other than that, the games here have been relatively stable, apart from possibly falling down from the 10 ahead of this from time to time. So it'll be interesting to see just how much of an impact that has had. But hopefully I'll get through this. My throat is still not 100%. I managed to get through a lot of reviews yesterday, and I think it's had a bit of a negative effect on it today. Probably overdid it, but this will be the only video and the podcast that I do today, so hopefully it won't be so bad. So without further ado, you know the drill. Get on with it! My number 40 requires me to make a slight apology because I made an error on the last segment of 10. I said that the particular game was my second favourite from a publisher called Mindclash. Turns out I was slightly wrong. It's actually my 3rd favourite, but we're talking by a minuscule margin. And to be fair, I'm kind of surprised that this one has jumped up so much. I can only imagine it's because of the new fancy set I've got of it, and the expansion, which I think added some cool stuff to it, and that is Trickerion. Trickerion has shot up 22 places, and I'm not entirely certain why it's jumped so high. But I must admit, when I did my top 100 this last year, I'd only recently got it to the table. I don't think I'd played it that much, so it was kind of newish to me. Now I've played it a few more times. It has now solidified itself at this kind of area, the top 100, and it is, just by like a minor scale, my 2nd favourite of Mindclash games, who just do some brilliant heavy thematic titles. Trickerion is basically the movie Prestige, if you want to turn it into a board game. The Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman movie. Really good underrated title, you should check it out. But this one has you being magicians, and you're putting on acts in a show, and you're trying to be the most prestigious magician, like you do. The expansion adds in an academy where you can refine your tricks and teach students and some extra little thematic elements like that. but basically you're rivaling the other magicians. So you're trying to get the best tricks, you're trying to get money for those, you're trying to get fame for putting on your tricks more often in the shows, you're trying to get people to help you, like little assistants and special managers, but then of course everybody else is trying to do the same, and it's a very tense worker placements type mechanic where your different assistants have got different power levels, which means they can do more at locations. It's quite tight for spaces, so you gotta be like, oh, I really want to do that first, but if I leave it till later, then someone's gonna nick that space. It's gonna happen. This one just works really nicely. The solo mode, I've only tried part of it. I haven't really dug into the solo mode in this one because I feel like it's going to be a mammoth to learn and teach. But when I play it multiplayer with some friends of mine, particularly two in particular who like love this game, then we have a blast. We're always like very competitive against each other. You know, we'll do mean things with these prophecies if we can. In fact, I remember one game I deliberately tanked the last round. Not like lost the game, I won the game, but I made it so in the previous round, I made it so that one of the prophecy tiles that comes back round basically nerfed everybody's assistant to a power level of 1, rather than what power level 2 or 3 they happen to be, which meant that all the abilities suddenly became nerfed in the last round. It completely messed them up, but thankfully didn't mess me up too much because I was already ahead by a margin enough to keep that margin by the end of the game. Didn't please them though, but it happens. You get up to some really nasty stuff in it, but it doesn't feel overly punishing. It feels like you can still pull back. It feels like you can sort of, a little bit of a setback, but I can keep going and still do well, even though, yeah, it does occasionally like punch you in the face and make it stick. But the theme is strong with this one. I like strong, heavy, thematic games. You know, if you give me a heavy game that isn't thematic, there's a chance I might not like it as much, and certainly there have been some examples of that. But you give me a heavy game that is rich in theme, an interesting theme, and it does it well, it's going to entice me more. And now, not in here, but in the other room, I've got the big red collector's box set, which makes it a lot easier to set up, but also just makes it look very pretty on my shelf. So, yeah, it's jumped up a lot. It's probably going to stick around here. And it's not the only heavy game you're going to see on this segment of 10. So, like I say, I like heavy games. Number 40, Tricarion. My number 39 is the end of an era. Yes, finally we get to my favourite Vital Lacerda game. He's done several games, and even though I don't think he follows me on Twitter anymore, you know, I don't think he follows that many people on Twitter, to be perfectly frank. You know, I still like his games, you know, no bad blood here. And I've already mentioned several. I've mentioned everything from Kanban to, Kanban, there's Boa, On Mars, Vinyos. There's only 3 other titles he's done, but 2 of them I hate. So it ain't gonna be those 2. Yeah, I think most of you have probably figured out that my 39 is The Gallerist. The Gallerist is hands down now my favourite of the Lacerda titles, and there are several reasons for this. Firstly, theme. Probably the strongest theme-wise out of all of them. You know, it really does feel like, alright, I've got my art gallery, I'm collecting these actual pieces of art that exist in real life, I've got these artists here, I'm beefing them up by fame, by publicising them on radio stations, and, you know, buying and commissioning them to paint me some art. I can put it in my gallery, I can sell it off, international market or local. Everything just ties together so well. But it looks gorgeous, it has one of the best rulebooks for learning the game out of all of the Lacerda titles, because some of the Lacerda titles are a bit harder to learn than others. The Gallerist though is written so well, it's just, something just clicks with that, and everything feels intuitive, and all the reference guides in it, which there aren't as many as the other games, are nice step-by-step logical sequences. They make sense. On top of that, you've only got to teach 4 different action spaces with 2 different types of actions in each, pretty much. So there's not a huge amount of spaces. And the great thing I love with this is, I mean, well, I've already mentioned a lot of great things, but let's mention 2 really key facts here. Firstly, the kick-out mechanism. If you're on it's basically worker placement to an extent, but you place your guy on there, or you can leave a little assistant behind, and if someone kicks you out of the spot to go there, then you have the potential to spend some influence from a track and do the same action they did. So when you're potentially going somewhere, you got to think, well, I want to do that action, but then, am I giving Gemma the chance to, you know, do that action as well? That's going to benefit her. I know she's going to spend the influence. I know she will. And this decision you have to like bear in mind. But then it works the other way. You deliberately leave an assistant when you move your pawn somewhere else, because it's like, come on, kick me out. get me out, come on, please, 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 I want to do that action. And it's like, and somebody might do it, and you're like, yes, somebody, but then occasionally they leave you alone. It's like, mess me up. And it's just a really cool mechanism to work with. The idea of this extra action you can take on top of your normal turns. But then the other thing I love, in fact, let's mention 3 things. Second thing, gorgeous production. This is like so gorgeous to look at. Ian O'Toole's artwork, perfect component quality, it looks gorgeous. But thirdly, everything feels like a reward. Lorenzo and Magnifico, Food Chain Magnate, possibly even Great Western Trail to an extent, but basically a lot of these heavy games that I do not like at all. You know, one thing I hate about them is that it feels like that rather than reward you, they're just constantly trying to punch you in the face. Lorenzo and Magnifico is a perfect example. You know, you get like 1 or 2 action spaces that are half decent, the rest of them will nerf you, and then you barely get any reward for doing all the hard work. With the Lacerda games, particularly the Gallerist, everything you do feels like it gets you a bonus in some way. Not like a game-changing bonus, but it might be, right, I'll go to the international market and I'll get this little tile for endgame scoring. And then you put it on your player board and you can get a little bonus. Okay, cool, I'll get some extra tickets. Alright, I'll take this contract. Well, if I put my dude on it, I can get a little bonus, a little bit of money. I'll move him up in fame or whatever. I'll spend some influence to do that. Oh, I get a little bonus. Everything just rewards you gently. Little gentle rewards that just remind you that you're kind of doing well, even if you might not necessarily be. It doesn't feel like I don't feel like I'm in the losing position, or at least I don't feel like, they're blatantly gonna win, I'm not doing very well here, but no, because you're constantly sort of having somebody go, hey, keep going, you'll do fine. Here's some money, here's some influence, you know, here's a special bonus just to keep your incentive up, and that just makes you feel good in games. You know, I don't want to be punched in the face. I want to be given ice cream. That's a really terrible metaphor, I know, but you get what I'm saying. It doesn't feel like you're being grounded into the dirt, even if you're not doing well at the game, and that just feels good. I really love the Gallerist. It's easily my favourite. What else can I say? My 39, love it. My number 38, a co-op. It's dropped 10 places. Oh yeah, the Gallerist. Where did that come from? Dropped 8 places, whoopee, I think it will solidify around this point. This one has dropped 10 from 38 to 28. It's still one of my favourite co-ops. I love teaching this game because I can teach it in family mode, advanced mode, I can teach it as I go, it eliminates the alpha player syndrome for me because I can teach a player, right, they ask me, like, oh, what should I do on my turn? And rather than dictate it for them, I can give them 6 or 7 different options that are all useful. You know, I might have a personal opinion, I reckon you should do this, but then I can say, what would you like to do? Would you like to drag that hazard out of the way? Would you like to go save the cat? Would you like to put that fire out? Would you like to go chop the wall down and go rescue that other person there? Do you want to just get in the fire engine and go spread fires? Yeah. Flashpoint Fire Rescue. This is still a really good fun co-op, even if I reckon that a 2nd edition with better components might be in order, but it still looks cool on the table. The theme is done super well, with the fire just going out of control at random times. I mean, you cannot get complacent in this game, particularly at higher difficulties. You'll be like, yeah, this is all pretty good. It's like, wait, what the hell? And suddenly everything goes to pot. That is assuming you ever get it under control in the first place, and especially in heroic difficulty, it's basically just a raging inferno everywhere and you can't even keep up with it.
Ow! Fire hot!
The prophecy will help.
Race against time to free as many people as you can. Well, save as many people as you can, whether it includes the cat and the dog, that's entirely your preference. I'll probably save the animals before I save the people, knowing me, but oh well. Yeah, I know that sounds bad, but whatever, I like animals. But it's just a really good, fun co-op. And this one, this is not high on the list because of this, but this has a bit of a nostalgic connection for me as well, because this was the first one I ever reviewed, the first game. I did a written review of it when I started the Blogger page, which is now being dissolved. I took it down because it was just an admin burden for me. But the idea is that it was the first one, back in 2013, I think, or was it a little while ago? No, maybe it was a bit more recent than that. I think that's when the game was released. It was probably a couple of years later, but either way, it was the first one I ever did. First title, Flashpoint Fire Rescue. So it just holds a bit of a soft spot in my heart, but that's got nothing to do with the rating or enjoyment of the game. I've got every expansion for it, multiple maps, multiple characters, multiple things that you can do, like climb walls, multi-story buildings, toxic hazards, all sorts of things, and it's just good fun. And even though I've got it in a weird crate in the other room, the crate is not so big that it's too cumbersome to take to a game night, so it actually is possible to get it out on the table. What I really want to do is check out the app version. I've got it on my PC, on Steam, Flashpoint Fire Rescue. Yet to try it. I'll have to do that as a solo play at some point, certainly if it's by popular request. So yeah, Flashpoint Fire Rescue, still going strong. I love co-ops. I don't get to play them as often these days because everything sort of comes out in competitive mode. I mean, granted, there's going to be more competitive games than co-op games, that just goes without saying, but I like co-ops. Sometimes it's nice to not have bad blood between players and work together, and Flashpoint is one of the best ones there is. My number 37 also dropped 10 places. This was basically above Flashpoint Fire Rescue last year, and it's above it this year. So they've been very much neck and neck, not by choice, it just seems to have happened that way. Social deduction games, I'm starting to wane a little bit from them. There's so many of them, they all pretty much do the same thing, sometimes with the occasional twist, this one included, and I just don't tend to go mad for them anymore. You know, I sort of pick and choose my favourites, and now I'm good. So I've already got, for example, Werewords on my shelf, but that's not in my top 100, but it is a neat little social deduction game. This, however, I think I'd be right in saying is my favourite social deduction game. Yep, that is pretty easy to go by, and that is Deception Murder in Hong Kong. This one is still a good favourite because I like the twist with the idea that the forensic guy can't talk, very much like Mysterium. I like that. They're coming up with clues, but then I also like doing the deduction part as well, where you're sort of trying to think, well, how did the murderer commit this? You know, he's given us clues that it was a sunny day, there was blood on the floor, there was a scream beforehand, so maybe it was the knife with the evidence left behind of a log or whatever, and you're coming up with these stories, but then everybody is trash talking everybody else. There's some stupid ways that I've heard people say you can kill someone with various items and various weapons, but it's just, it blends that element of social deduction, which is still good fun, but still has a very enjoyable deduction game within it. So you get the laughter, but you get the fun gameplay as well. Add to that you've got the different roles. If you add more players, this works great with a nice big group of players. I mean, I have taught a 10 to 12 person game of this before, and whew, that was interesting. You know, it's very good being a forensic scientist because then you don't have to talk. But with this also, I like the witness dynamic where you've got one person who knows who the murderer is, well, knows which one of them out of the murderer and accomplice is bad people, but they don't necessarily know the weapon and that, and even then they can't be obvious about it because then if the murderer gets found out, but they go, you're the witness, then the bad guys automatically win. So there's that get out clause that even if the bad guy did a terrible job at hiding themselves, if they can figure out the witness, they've still got a chance. It just creates a lot of laughter. Fairly easy to set up, you know, the components are pretty basic, the expansion just adds more variety. I don't need any more for this game, I'm happy with the content as it is, but this is definitely my pick of a social deduction game. I am done with One Night Ultimate Werewolf, I think, because I do have it on my shelf, but I think I'm probably going to donate it or get rid of it at some point, because frankly, Werewords killed One Night Werewolf and Deception killed One Night Werewolf, so I'm kind of done with the One Night Werewolf thing. So yeah, Deception Murder in Hong Kong, still great fun from, I think it's Jolly Fingers, the one I've got. It might also be called CS Files, so depending what country you're in and what print you get, it's the same game, so don't worry too much on that. But yeah, 37, my favourite social deduction game, Deception. My number 36 has only dropped one place actually. I mean, it's pretty much stable from last year. And this is, well, actually to be fair, I've got a lot of solo games on this list, or solo games, so I'm not going to call this one my favourite, but in terms of quickie solo games, this probably could be a favourite actually, because most of the other solo games I've got require a bit more effort to get to the table and play. This one is straight up nice and easy, and I'm certainly getting more into this beverage than ever before. I used to be pretty much a sole tea drinker, but now I drink coffee about as much as I drink tea, possibly even more so at times. I even came off caffeine for 6 months back in March, but sadly, due to just having to try and stay awake for work and doing this and that, I need a little bit of caffeine just to get me through the first half of the day, and then I quit before like the late afternoon. But now coffee has become a staple in my general system, and Coffee Roaster is a great fun solo game to play based on that theme. Originally from, I think it's Sashi and Sashi, I think originally did it. I'm not going to state which country it's from because I always get it wrong, but the with this one, well, you can get it from Stronghold Games and DLP Games now, so they have reprinted it. It's more available, finally. The amount of times I kept saying, this is an amazing game, and no one could get hold of it, and everyone was always annoyed at me for that. But now you can get a copy, and it's great. It's a bag builder, solo-only game, where you are brewing a cup of coffee. Sounds pretty basic. It's a nice, light-hearted, charming theme, but the idea is that you choose a coffee, you put a bunch of tokens in the bag, different types, the various beans, water, etc. And then you draw so many out of the bag each turn, and you got to figure out what to do with them. You've got some coloured tokens that allow you to do weird things like blend beans together, separate them, burn them for longer, that kind of thing. You've got some special effects you can trigger as well that help you in the later half of the game. But for the most part, you're sort of deciding, right, this turn I draw 10 tokens. Right, let's see, they go away. I'll leave those to roast for a bit. I'll combine those two to make that. And it's just like a nice little puzzle that you try and work out. Yeah, there's luck involved. You're drawing from a bag, what you expect. But that's no different from something like Orleans, for example. It's still luck of drawing from a bag. But with this, it's just a good light theme, and you still get choices as to what to do with the tokens and how long you want to keep doing it for. This roast counter basically ticks up and up and up, and you know, the longer you leave it, the more smoke appears because you are basically roasting something for an extended period of time, and then you decide to brew your coffee. Then you draw a token one after another, you try and match the roast rating or something like that you need, as well as get like certain flavors and other elements into your coffee to score the most points, and you just see how you did. There's no major competitive nature or you lost. It's just a case of you got this many points. How well did you do? Do one, do 3 in a row in a menu, whatever. Play it how you like. But I just found it so charming. I found out about this, what, like 2-3 years ago, I think, at Essen. I went to a Dice Tower live show. I think Eric Summerer mentioned it. I thought, never even heard of this, but it sounds quite cool. Went over to, I think it was a Career Board Games that had it out at the time. And lovely little Korean girl just sat down with me, taught it to me solo. Her English was pretty good actually for what I was expecting. And I fell in love with the game. Couldn't buy it at the time, so I went back the next day and they had a copy and I bought it then. I was so desperate to get it because I enjoyed it that much. Coffee Roaster is a must for anybody who is a fan of solo gaming, and particularly if bag building is your thing. Check it out, Coffee Roaster. And my 35, we're now on to the new title for this list, and this is probably going to be the biggest surprise to a lot of you. I have raved about this game. I can't recall if I did a review of it. I think I did. If I've got room, then you might see a card at the top of the screen for it. But this one, to be this high in my top 100, I was quite shocked myself. Bruno Cathala and Bombix. Combining those two together is usually a match made in heaven, although not always. You know, I wasn't a fan of that, what was it called, Imaginarium or something? I thought that was a bit bland. But, you know, this one just sung to me as a nice, small filler game. I've got a big game called Abyss, which I love to bits. More on that another time. But this one, this tiny little card game here, Abyss Conspiracy, or whatever you want to call it, Conspiracy Abyss Universe, I don't know, stupid name, I must admit. Just call it Conspiracy or Abyss Conspiracy, whatever. But this little card game has really sung to me, and it is my 35. This is a super quick filler, particularly if you play it with 2 players. With 3 and 4, it's a little bit more chaotic and a bit more longer, but as long as people don't AP on their turns, which they really shouldn't, but, you know, some people, they take games a little bit too seriously compared to others. But you get the right group. This one is, what, 20 to 30 minutes tops. In fact, when I played it at Essen last year, was when I first heard about it. This was during the time when Bombix had major stock issues, and so did half of the distributors there. It was a massive controversy. You know, basically all the deliveries got messed up for people going to Essen, so there was a lot of stock issues. I couldn't get this game until a good month or 2 after Essen. It was really annoying. But a French guy sat me down, taught me the rules there and then. I knew nothing about the game, just literally it's in the Abyss universe, we'll go with it. And we finished a 2-player in 20 minutes, including the teach. It is fast, but don't think that it's got no substance. This is a good, deep little game. It borrows from the Abyss main game in that it's very much a case of, I have choices, but how many choices do I want to give the opponent? You have to draw from a deck of cards and get those cool lords with the fantastic fish artwork like in Abyss, and you're building an upside down pyramid and you're trying to sort of place the lords in various ways to get more points. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the idea is that when you draw from the deck, you select how many you want to draw, up to 3. But then if you draw too few, you don't have many choices yourself, but then you don't leave much choice for the opponent. But then if you draw lots, you go, good, I found one that I like, but I've just revealed 2 that the opponents are definitely going to like. And any that you don't use go into a communal pickup, where you can pick up all of the same color. So you might have just given an opponent a chance to pick up 3 cards, easily build up their pyramid and get quite a few points. And the same goes for unlocking locations and getting pearls and a few other little bits that it kind of borrows from the big brother of Abyss. But it's just a really neat filler. There's just something about it that just clicked with me. I mean, it looks gorgeous. It's going to be one of the best looking filler games you've ever played with the artwork that's on it. But the rules are straightforward. There's a reference bit at the back for some of the location abilities, which are a little bit more fiddly with the iconography, but nothing too strenuous. Apart from that, it's an abstract game, effectively, an abstract cards placement game. But it just turns go pretty quickly, and I like that tension of going, which one do I want in there? Do I take a chance of the red? Maybe I want the blue, but hang on, if I leave that card for him, you're going to take it. I need to take it first, or you're going to do it. I don't know. And it just creates some very good little choices that aren't brain-burning, it's only a filler, but it just sung to me. Nice little production in a little tin box. Granted, it's a bit annoying that if you sleeve the cards, you have to kind of do a weird, shall we say, setup inside the tin in order to store it. It could have been improved in that regard, but that little foible aside, if you don't sleeve your cards, I ain't got a problem. I don't know why it somehow got this high, I must admit. I mean, I do love it. I gave it a 9 out of 10, I think. It is a really cool filler game, and possibly my favourite filler. Well, actually, I don't know. If we're counting a few 2-player games coming up, yeah, there's probably some better fillers, but it's definitely one of my favourites that can play more than 2 players. In fact, that might be a better claim to make, actually. My favourite multiplayer filler game. And yeah, I think that's pretty accurate, actually. My favourite multiplayer filler game. So it's definitely one to try out. Whether or not you've played Abyss, it doesn't matter. You don't have to play Abyss to know the little card game. It just might give you a little bit more of a thematic inclusion as to what these fish lords are. But other than that, you could grab Abyss Conspiracy by itself, play it solely for the mechanics, and I reckon you'll have a good time. So, new to the list at 35, Abyss Conspiracy Universe, whatever you want to call it. My number 34 dropped from 28, dropped from 26, so 8 places. That was what was confusing me. Again, another heavy game. Oh my god, Luke, I do like heavy games. Whatever surprises this. And this one isn't even a thematic heavy game. There's very little theme in this. I mean, the setting's quite cool, but let's face it, the theme is kind of whatever, pushed off to the side, as tends to be the case with Vladimir Suchy games. There's another one coming up on the list which I am not going to give clues about right now, but this is mainly on my list because I really do love the card system in it, where you place these cards down of different colours, and depending on where you place the card, you could get a bonus ability from the card if you can match the colour up. Again, like I say, this is a very abstracted heavy Euro game, but down there, Underwater Cities along with New Discoveries. I did a insert review for this recently, and it is a big like for me, and I think a lot of it just stems from that card system. All these cards with unique abilities on them and different stuff, so you know, you've got to react tactically to what the cards are. Yeah, you can have a strategy of, I'm going to build all the way over there, or I'm going to focus on tunnels probably, or maybe I should guide myself to that special card later, but at the end of the day, you're drawing cards from a deck, so you do have to adapt to the cards you've got and react to what spaces get taken by opponents, what colours are available. I mean, it's no good saying, well, I'm going to focus on stuff that requires me to get yellow cards if I draw nothing but greens. I need to find a way to get around it. And I think that aspect just sings to me, the idea that I have to figure out how to adapt to a situation rather than just go, right, here's my strategy and I'll stick with it throughout the whole game. Again, like I say, the theme is pretty much non-existent here, but it probably wouldn't have stayed this high if it didn't have the expansion. The New Discoveries element of the archaeology thing, I can take it or leave it, I'm not too fussed, but getting those new recess boards with different setups, the new personal player powers, having more cards in general, and the fact that I have pimped it up now with an insert and some proper plastic 3D pieces really does make this one a good fun one to get out. It just mechanically, this one just sung to me. It ticked the right boxes for what I want. Now granted, a little caveat here or two, 4 players? No. Not playing this with 4 players. This is a 3-player game max. 3 players is fine, 2 players is great. Solo mode's actually not too bad actually, but yeah, I'm not playing this with 4. Way too long. I have had games of this with 4 players where people have taken too long on their turns, and I've just wanted to kill myself. It does happen. So you gotta be a little bit careful with that one. It's kind of a bit like Tekken in that respect actually. Way too long with 4 players, but yeah, it works for me. I do like some heavy games, people, and Underwater Cities, I'm sure a lot of people are going to agree, is, in fact, well, a lot of people will agree it's a pretty good game. What most people probably won't agree on, though, and this is something that has been said by other people, this is the game I wanted from Terraforming Mars. Terraforming Mars, I don't mind, but I don't particularly like it that much either. Whereas this one kind of gave me that feeling of a tactical card game with like deciding what to do with a selection of cards that you find, and I just feel like it gave me what I wanted from Terraforming Mars that Terraforming Mars didn't provide. I know they're very different games, but this has been said about both games, and I kind of agree with it. Underwater Cities, greater than Terraforming Mars, and that probably has already spawned fire in the comments. You motherfucker! My number 33, down from 29, 4 places, whatever. This is still a fantastic worker placement game. I've raved about this not only for component quality, but just for the way the theme is represented so well, and the fact that it has one of the best rulebooks ever for learning a game. It just got me up and playing it so quickly, and it wasn't even trying to play a solo mode of it, it just really worked. There is a series of games called the Manhattan Project. The original one came out many years ago. There's two sequels to this, and it's a really cool system where you place workers down as a worker placement, but then you decide when to take the workers back. And people do it at different times, and when you do, you resolve another phase. But it's to you specifically. So you might be waiting for someone to hurry up and get shut off the space you want, but they're taking their sweet time because they've got workers to put out and they're not in a hurry to take them back. And they know this. This is my favourite of the trilogy. The last one was a bit too heavy, a bit too long, and a bit too abstracted. It was too many tracks. The first one is fine, but the whole bombers and fighters thing was a complete waste of space, and it just, it seemed a little bit too basic for me. But down here, somewhere down here, where are you? I know you're around here somewhere. Come on, reveal yourself. Maybe it's in the other room. Or maybe I'm just blind. Oh no, there it is. Down there, I just couldn't see it. Yeah, Energy Empire. Energy Empire is a great worker placement game. That whole system, put your workers down and take it back at different times, that remains. But here, you take control of a nation and you're trying to build up an infrastructure of power plants that are represented by dice. You can decide to go for clean energy or for dirty nuclear and coal energy. Obviously the latter will get you more power, which you need to do various actions, but then it will pollute your area, your little player board, and you have to spend time cleaning it up or it's negative points. But then if you go for clean energy, you don't have to worry so much about pollution, but then it's also not going to generate as much power. As well as this, you're building lots of different buildings from 3 different categories that allow you to do all sorts of cool combos, but you need workers and power in order to facilitate the actions on there. So you've got to get those plants built up as well as do the buildings. But then on top of this, you've got some events from a randomized set in each game where you can look ahead to sort of go, oh, that's going to hit us soon. That's something I might want to prepare for, especially as it will give you some ways to get points, but also potentially not lose points. On top of that, you do have 1 or 2 abstracted things of like propelling yourself up a UN track. That's probably one of the weak links of it, but it's another easy system to get points. But this one just represents that theme so well. You know, everybody is making references and trash talking each other's player board for how stupidly polluted they are or what type of power they're doing. The worker spaces are all like, you know, there's plenty to go around, but sometimes somebody just won't get off the space that you're on, but you can still go to it, you've just got to spend more workers. Do you want to do that though? Because the more times you keep refreshing yourself with power, the less actual actions you're doing. It's a cool balancing act, and it just seems to gel with me so well. Great theme, medium weight, good one to teach in terms of learning from the rulebook. You know, really good rulebook in this one. A solo mode. Goes up to 5 players, don't play with more than 4. So really don't play it with 5 players, but 2 to 4 seems to work pretty well for this one, and it is easily the best of the Manhattan Project trilogy. I can understand if you prefer the original one, fine. I can't understand it if you prefer the last one in the Manhattan Project trilogy. Compared to Energy Empire, no way. And, you know, I've created pretty much like James Bond villains out of this game. You know, I've managed to sort of go, right, I'm going to take Iraq as my nation, and I have pretty much polluted my entire air and land area of my nation. Sea's great though, so I'm just going to hang around in the sea in my James Bond base or whatever. Like, was it Spy Who Loved Me? I think I had it. Was it Spy Who Loved Me? Yeah, I think that was the water base. Basically just in my little like pod underneath the water while the whole world gets polluted by nuclear weapons. It was kind of like what I created with my span. It won. It did well. I just had to really make up for the fact that nuclear waste had gone all over my land and air. It was just quite amusing, but a lot of people do this sort of thing, and people are, you know, making the references and trash talking. It just generates a good amount of interaction, as well as giving you a very smooth, relatively streamlined Euro game with many different paths to victory. It's a solid title. Honestly, check it out if you can find yourself a copy. Very impatient for the expansion. I don't know what's happening with that, but, you know, I think I kickstart. No, did I kickstart? No, I didn't kickstart it, but I'm waiting for it to get released. It just seems to be taking its sweet time, but I don't know. I can wait because, frankly, the base set's got all you need anyway. My number 32 dropped 14 places, but that doesn't mean that it's on the way out. I still really enjoy it. I just think maybe it's kind of finding its place in the top 100. And Ignacy Trzewiczek makes a nice return to the list along with Portal Games. And believe me, it won't be the last time we hear from Portal. Well, maybe not too many more times, but there's certainly at least 1 or 2 more times we're going to hear from them. But this is a really cool deduction game. This is my deduction game of choice, and because it is like brain burny, but it feels thematically perfect as a deduction game. And it is, of course, Detective, a modern crime board game, whatever, you know, forget that tagline, weird tagline, but just Detective from Portal. This is a heavy deduction game, particularly in the base set. But I've got the LA Crimes expansion, I've got a couple of the standalone cases, I bought Season 1, check out my review for that on the channel, where it gives you 3 more standalone cases as a kind of entry point into Detective. And seriously, I do recommend it. If you want to just dip your toes into Detective, check out the Season 1 box set. It's the perfect way to do it. But you've got the extended campaigns, the standalone cases, and it just perfectly represents being a detective. That website that you click onto in order to look up fingerprints and mugshots and like Wikipedia articles, it feels like you're really there in a CSI episode doing like a proper detective case. You gotta take notes, you've got to do the whole mind map thing, because otherwise you just won't be able to remember enough physical points. I suck hard at this game in terms of figuring stuff out when I play it in solo mode. You can play it in a group, providing you don't go too mad with the size of the group. You can still have a good time with it because each person can have their own sort of role. But I play it solo pretty much 90% of the time. I've played it solo and I get a kick out of it. It just allows me to kill 90 minutes, 2 hours or more to basically go through this case and think, come on, what am I missing here? There's a clue, you're linked to this somehow, and you're reading through the cards, you're getting involved in the story, and they went to trouble to give you a pretty in-depth like description of everything here. You know, I mean, particularly the base set, we were joking about how much it seems to reference food and what you're having for lunch and a snack, and it's like, wow, they're really going descriptive here. But even the later scenarios give you like decent transcripts of conversations that you're having, recordings. It really sets the scene nicely. And believe me, you want a thematic experience, like the true thematic experience, play the LA Crimes expansion and put on the soundtrack to Lethal Weapon or Beverly Hills Cop while you're playing it. Nothing manages to like take the theme of this better than playing that expansion with that type of music. In terms of the other expansions, well, I don't know, you could probably play the Lethal Weapon soundtrack. That would work pretty well. Yeah, I think that would work. I mean, to be fair, just play any kind of buddy cop style soundtrack with this game and you'll have a good time. It's just a really solid game. I love it when they bring out new cases. I usually buy it and check them out at some point. Again, I suck most of the time. I have won some cases. I have badly lost others, but it's just good, solid fun. When I want a deduction game, this is the one I go to first. Chronicles is great. Don't get me wrong. What was it, number 40? Yeah, 41. Still love Chronicles, but Detective, I just prefer that little bit more. And finally, my 31 dropping 10 places. I think that's 10 places. Nope, hang on, looking at the wrong bit here. 11 places. Well, it was nearly there. It was 20, now it's 31. This is a pure abstract card game that I will pretty much universally only play 2 players. Occasionally 3 if I'm playing it online, and to be fair, I played it online a lot at the start of COVID. I mean, I was in danger of thinking, what am I going to do with this game, because I had expansions to it I could never play, and it was a 2-player game primarily with no solo mode, so which meant I couldn't really get it to the table. But when COVID started, I went onto Board Game Arena, and I must have played game after game after game after game of this. And granted, it made me want to take a break from it for a while, but I was just playing it religiously with a fair few people, and that is innovation. It is a pure abstract card game where you're basically just trying to trigger all these different abilities on unique cards with the use of symbols. Gathering up the various symbols allows you to perform what they call dogmas, and they're basically abilities on cards, but some of them your opponent gets to do as well if they match you in the quantity of symbols. Some of them are aggressive though, where if you have more than your opponent, you can force them to do something do something bad, give you something, lose cards, it can mess them over. But it's a pretty quick game. You can have some really cool moments of, they got a head start, but then you pull it back. Just because you are far behind does not necessarily mean you will lose. I have pulled some belters of recoveries in this, and I have seen some times where I'm like, yeah, I'm doing pretty well. This one's in the back. Uh-oh, you just, that's not good. And then suddenly they pull it back and suddenly it gets more tense. I've had super tight finishes in this game. Now, the caveat is you can get hosed by luck of the draw. There is an element of luck in this game, but if you just don't take it too seriously, thinking that it's like, oh, this is some masterful skill-based game. No, it's not. It's a card game. Just like the other similar ones like Motonai and, is it Motonai? Yeah, Motonai and a couple of others, like, is it Glory to Rome? I forget, but, those little card games where you draw and you do all sort of crazy stuff with symbols, it's still gotta have some luck of the draw. But I just love the tactical nature of it. I mean, this is pure tactics in a box. There is no strategy. You cannot come up with a strategy because you don't know what cards you're going to come up with later. It's all about adapting to the situation. Something I like in games, tactical adaptation, where I get a look at the playing state and I draw a card and I think, this could work quite well, providing they don't do that. If I place that down there and then trigger this one on my turn, that could work. And then as their game state changes, you have to think, they're progressing quite high on the crowns. I need to find a defense. Well, if I do this, I can keep him at bay until I work my way up to a later age. And the expansions add some cool elements as well. They're not mandatory though. I would say Echoes of the Past is definitely the best one to get. The other ones you can take or leave, but if you get the, I think it's in the other room now, the 3rd edition set like I've got, then you get all the expansions anyway. But to be honest, 2 of the expansions I've not even touched. I've pretty much played this solely with the base game or Echoes of the Past added on, and when I do, I have a blast. It's just a shame I don't really get it played a lot in person. I have to rely on the online version, which doesn't have the expansions in it, I don't think. So yeah, really love this one. It's not for everybody, I do admit. There's a lot of people out there who absolutely loathe innovation, and I can easily see why. It just seemed to tick the right boxes for me, and it became a firm favourite. Might drop a little bit over time if I can't get it played as much, but I don't think it's going to go into the bottom half of the list. I still really get a kick out of Asmodee's. Could have used a bit of a visual upgrade maybe. It did when Yellow printed it, but then Yellow stopped printing it and their boxes were bad. Now Asmodee have done the 3rd edition, which means you have to go to the graphically sound but visually bleh version with Asmodee. Yeah, it's not a looker, it's more for the fun gameplay. So yeah, that's it. 40 to 31. And we're done with the pre-recordeds. I know some of you would like the whole list to be pre-recorded, but I've got to get these done. And I just cannot edit this much stuff in the time I have, as well as do these 30. This is always the busiest time of year for me. And even though we've had a bit of a lull the last 2 weeks in terms of game releases, I've had a fair amount of stuff sent to me in advance. So I need to get them done. And we're soon approaching Essen. Yeah, Essen's not happening this year, but games are getting released around that point. It's going to hit me with a lot of games if I'm not careful, so I need to be careful. So the sooner I get this done, the better. So what I'm going to do is the next 3 will be live streamed. As I said, I'll try and condense the time of the streams down as much as I can to around the similar length to what I've done here. Probably 45 minutes ideally. I will at the very worst case scenario, keep them to less than an hour though. I know some of you don't mind how long they are, but I'm just thinking of those who do get put off by really long videos. You know, live streams don't get as much views as the pre-recorded stuff does. But, you know, hopefully you'll still get a kick out of like interacting with me about the games as I'm talking about these favorites. And favorites coming up. I mean, next 10, we've got 4 new games in the next set of 10. And then we got 2 new games in the other set. And then we've got 3 new games in the top 10. This is going to be a lot of cool titles. These are ones that I just go goo goo gaga for. You know, what have we been doing for a while? We've been on 9 out of 10 games for a good 20 odd games. Were any of these 10 out of 10? Well, I don't know. I think, no, Underwater Cities was not a 10. Manhattan Project Energy Empire, probably a 9. Detective, probably a 9. Innovation, a 9. But I think as we go on to 30 plus, we start getting games that I've ranked a 10. Like these I adore. So we are really getting into the creme de la creme of games that I love. And we have got a mix of light, medium, heavy, thematic, abstract, you name it, we've got it all in these next 30. So I hope you will join me in those lists, even though they will be streamed. You know, if you can't make the live stream date itself, don't worry. Time zones are a pain. But, you know, even if you just check it out after it's uploaded to YouTube, that would be great. You do not have to watch it live. I would just love it if you were there so that you can talk about these games with me in the chat. Thank you for checking out this segment of the top 100, but other people do top 10 lists as well. They talk about lots of favorite games that they have, and so I would like you to check them out and get even more passionate opinions about these sort of games. So why don't you check out this channel for a kickoff?
Board Game Time Lapses, where we make, you guessed it, time lapses of board games. We do this while giving you an overview of the game through audio and visual commentary to help you understand how to play it. We also do how to set up videos, where we take you from opening the box all the way to playing your first turn. And lastly, we make should you buy videos, where we answer questions about a game to help you decide whether or not it's for you or not. Board Game Time Lapses.
So that's all for me on this video. If you liked what you see and have earned your subscription, please click the avatar in the center of the screen to subscribe and hit the bell for future notifications because YouTube can be dumb sometimes. Until next time, feel free to check out the most recent content uploaded, or you can check out a personal suggestion by myself. So take care and remember, it's only a game.